the majority of artists today and probably going forward, I think, are going to be some kind of entrepreneur, whether or not they want to call themselves that, whether or not they like that idea, whether or not they agree with it.
We live in a time that holding down one job title for a whole career is not possible anymore. At some point of our journey, we can expect a career reinvention is going to happen. So how do we embrace that? What does it take for us to navigate a career reinvention mindfully and sometimes even proactively? On this season of the Everyday Talent Podcast, we are talking about Tales of Reinvention. Tune in as we dive into this topic with fellow creatives and experts. Welcome to the Everyday Talent Podcast. This is your go-to podcast for the most honest look into all things creative career related. I'm your host, Betty. I'm a creative, a nonprofit consultant, and a career and business coach for creative people just like you. Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. I'm your host, Betty. Do you have a headache when it comes to manage your personal finance? Or let me be specific, when it comes to managing your taxes. If you're a self-employed creative, or even if you have a full-time job and then you have a side hustle that you generate some income, you're likely going to have this pain point. In my own experience, I had an unpleasant experience where I get the tax bill at the end of the tax year and get surprised by how much I needed to pay when I was feeling that I was already barely making ends meet as a creative person. I also have heard similar experience from my clients and countless other creatives. So imagine my delight when I came across this platform called SAI, a tech startup dedicated to revolutionizing how creators manage their finance. I was so excited that I reached out to the founder of SAI, Owais Lightwala, and invited him to the podcast. I swear, this episode is not an advertisement. I'm genuinely interested in the story behind SAI. And when I talked with Owais, what I discovered was that he has a fascinating career. Other than being a tech startup founder, he's also a professor and the founding director of Chrysalis at the Creative School, a new multidisciplinary performance hub at TMU here in Toronto. In addition, he used to be a theater producer, most notably as the first managing director for Why Not Theater. In this episode, you're going to hear about Owais' story, his insights, and his beliefs on the importance of supporting creatives on managing their personal finance and other hot takes on the current state of creative work. Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. Today on the podcast with me, I have a special guest here, Owais. Hi, Owais.
Hello, so good to join you, Betty.
Nice to have you here. Can you share with a little bit with the audience what you do and how you come to do what you do?
These days, my day job is assistant professor at the Creative School at Toronto Metropolitan University, which is a lot of words to basically say I get paid to think and teach people how to think. Particularly the things that I am interested in my day work are things around creative entrepreneurship. How do we create opportunity for people to make sustainable businesses and living in arts and culture and creativity? Anything to do with creative technology, specifically around AI and how that might transform our work and world for the better. And leadership and innovation as well, as I think they really intersect with entrepreneurship and the work I'm interested in there. So that's kind of my day role, but outside of that, I also am involved in a lot of projects myself. I've founded some tech companies, some ideas there. I have been a theater producer for the majority of my career. I used to run a company called Wine and Theater, where I really kind of grew up in the arts sector and learned about what the Canadian arts culture system is, how it works, and along with that company and working with the folks there, was really trying to develop a vision of what it could be and where we could take this country forward into a bold new future. So, yeah, that's a bit of a kind of professional introduction. And my backstory before that is I'm an immigrant to Canada. I came here when I was 14. I was born in Pakistan actually, and grew up in Dubai. and then came to Canada as a teenager. So I don't really know where I belong.
Hmm.
It's kind
That
of
makes the
a,
two of us.
yeah, like I have a national identity and a birthplace where I've never lived, the place where I've lived the longest. It's Canada, but obviously there's a sense of Canadianness that I don't know if I will ever reach fully.
Hmm.
And in growing up in Dubai, I had a childhood there, but it is a place that is very much for anybody who's not a local citizen, very much a transient relationship. So yeah, just a complicated relationship with uh, the sense of uh, being from somewhere and identity in that regard, which I think is informing my perspectives on everything that I work on too. Is that we are fluid creatures and our sense of culture and identity is fluid and changing all the time.
Hmm. How do you think that cross-cultural and also like, the feeling of like you belongs everywhere, but also nowhere influence your perspective on your career choices?
I mean, it's interesting because I almost didn't have this career precisely because of my cultural background, where no one in my family or my extended family or my extended family has ever had a career in anything close to arts, culture, entertainment at all.
Mm.
So my family, my parents in particular, really struggled with me wanting to go into theater as a young person. And I think conveniently for my temperament and personality, that struggle that they had was exactly the reason I ended up doing it because it became a rebellion for me against my kind of conformity that I've perceived in my community.
Hmm.
So I have a career at all in the arts and in the sector precisely because my parents really did not want me to. And I wonder sometimes if they had just been like, whatever you do, you can't do computer engineering at Waterloo. I might
You
be
might be,
working at
yeah,
Microsoft right now, like,
yeah, yeah.
because really, in terms of I, I, in my grade 12 graduating class, I had both the drama award and the computer science award. So like, I could have gone either way very easily. Um,
Mm.
it was a, it wasn't like it wasn't definitely wasn't a childhood dream of mine to be in an artistic vision. I did want to. I liked drawing when I was a kid, and there was a moment when I wanted to be an artist, and I remember my dad saying to me, "Oh no, you don't want to be an artist. You want to be car," because I drew a lot of cars. He was like, "You want to be a car designer or
Mm.
car engineer. That's what you mean. There's no such thing as an artist."
That's what
So
you mean. I love how he kind of framed it there. Yeah, for you. Um, so it's interesting because your interest, you said your interest were computer science and the art. Now it's kind of branding beautifully with the companies that, like with
I
Side,
know,
the
right?
company you
Yeah.
found. Yeah. Can
I
you
mean,
tell?
yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that behind idea behind that?
Yeah, the idea was basically so when I joined the university in 2020, I had just left my job at Why Not Theater, which for anybody
Mm,
who's worked in the nonprofit sector probably can relate that like working in the nonprofit art sector and in the role that I was, which is a leadership role, it was a very, very all consuming kind of role. So I'd never really had the capacity once I got kind of fully into the Why Not Theater world to pursue anything seriously of my own kind of volition. And I was doing some dabbling in some projects here and there, but they were all very much performing arts related. And I had always kind of wanted to pursue something in technology since I was a kid. So it was an opportunity when I joined the university to like think, basically, they were like, you can do anything you want. You need to have a research kind of focus, and think about what it is that you want to make now and what you want to learn about and what you want to do. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I haven't had the
yes.
opportunity to ask that question in a long
Mm-hmm.
time. Um, and what do I want to do right now? And obviously, 2020 pandemic had just happened. The world was going through all this change.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the roundtable discussions that was happening, where industry was gathering and people were, having their panic attacks about what to do next, someone said something that struck with me where they were like, I have no idea what this cash burn thing is. Everybody keeps saying like, what's your burn? I have no idea what that is. And I'm like freaking out. I don't know what's going to happen to my organization. And I remember clocking that and going, oh yeah, because at that point, I had self-taught myself as an arts manager. I'd self-taught myself accounting. I'd self-taught myself finance. I'd self-taught myself how to run the
Mm-hmm.
business. And I just thought it was just hard for me because I had never really had any schooling. And then I realized the whole sector is kind of like that, where very few people in the sector go to any kind of business school or business training or finance training. There's a broad kind of gap in financial literacy and financial knowledge and understanding. I think it's also a little bit like the kind of people that want to go into arts and culture. There's a bit of the orientation, let's say, of
Mm-hmm.
the kinds of person who are attracted to creative fields. Um, and they tend not to be the same people who go into accounting. So there's a bit of divergence there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that moment, and that got me initially interested in this idea that there might be something that we can do here. And then I was also looking for a technology project because I was wanting to get back into that. And I had this idea where I was like, we have all this incredible technology now, and I've been very inspired by companies like Canva that have democratized
Mm-hmm.
things that used to be very difficult and very expensive. Like this happens to me all the time, and happened to me very recently too, where I'll be hiring an intern and someone will apply and say they're a graphic designer, and I'll say, "Oh, really? What tools do you use?" And they say, "Oh, I use Canva Premium," and I know what they mean,
Mm-hmm.
but it's fascinating to me that that term now that I can do graphic design is no longer something that requires people to have at the very least 6 months of some kind of training and a very expensive Adobe license and like some kind of background in that.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, almost anybody with a few hours and a Canva Premium can call themselves a designer. Uh, and that kind of like accessibility of something that previously was so challenging that technology made possible was also something that I was inspired by. And I was thinking to myself, is it possible to do this with finance? Can can the challenge of financial management be as easy as this? Because I did eventually do an MBA and I also took 100 different MBA business courses and along
Mm-hmm.
the way. So I had to learn a lot of things in order
Yeah.
to get to the place where I got to. But I don't know that everybody else is going to or has the time or the money or the capacity. And yeah, and that was kind of the seed ideas of bringing those things together, seeing in the sector a widespread financial literacy gap, and then seeing the potential in technology to make things significantly more accessible, significantly more scalable than just me doing it for people, which is the thing that like I'd also done that a lot for a lot of friends and a lot of colleagues and a lot of professional work where I was the person who would help them with that. And I was like, I can't scale. There's only so many hours in a day, and then I have to go to sleep. But a system, a software, a web app that could scale. People could actually,
Mm-hmm.
the more people that use it, actually, the better it would get. Rather than the more people that text me, the worse I become at communicating. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of my starting point.
I love it. I mean, like in my outreach to you, inviting you to this podcast, I mentioned how like money is a topic that I think is like really like it's starting to change, but like it used to be like when I entered the sector, I feel like it's like a taboo area that people don't talk about in the art sector. And then as a fellow creative arts like arts administrator and now in my work as a coach, like I see that coming up again and again for creatives, and the pain points are very specific and unique because they're orientations in the sector and the relationship with money is like has specific kinds of relationship with money. So I'm curious in your research as you design a product for SAI, what are something that you observe are the unique pain points and experiences that creators might have with money and tax and accounting?
Yeah, it's so many things, but I'll distill it down to one big category of unique things to creatives is the thing I alluded to earlier, where creative people tend to come from artistic backgrounds and trainings and not from business backgrounds and trainings. And that's, uh, because of that downstream, I think is a lot of just basic knowledge that they don't ever have the opportunity to learn. I don't think a lot of people realize when they sign up to go to OCAD or they sign up to go to theater school that, or even to pursue music or something, like I don't think a lot of people realize that like the majority of artists today and probably going forward, I think are going to be some kind of entrepreneur, whether or not they want to call themselves that, whether or not they like that idea, whether or not they agree with it. You're basically going to be a small business. Um, and it's interesting to me that like, they don't get any small business training or knowledge along the way. So there's that piece where, the training and knowledge that they get is different from the training and knowledge you get in business school. The other big thing I think is that this industry is so immensely volatile and kind of uh, challenging to operate in because unlike the career of, ironically, actually, a lot of accountants can just go to accounting school and then go get a job and maybe
Mm-hmm.
work at a couple of jobs over the course of their life and then they retire. And their financial situation is really just, do I make enough money to pay for the things I want to buy? Yes or no? Did I get a promotion this year? Yes or no? Whatever. File the taxes, you're done. And for most creatives and creative industries have a significantly higher percentage of people who are freelancers,
Yes.
significantly higher percentage of people who are gig workers, significantly higher percentage of people who are self-employed and running small businesses. So they actually have much more volatility, much more independence, much more kind of seasonal work. Like the work is not as predictable than as other industries. So you have this kind of industry that actually demands more business savvy and more financial savvy, but you had less training in it from the get-go. And that now compounds your situation. And then the other category that I realized was really unique to creative industries, like there's actually a lot of other industries and a lot of other spaces where um, you know, this is their expertise. Like doctors are not particularly good at managing money either. Dentists aren't. Like there's other places where people are. I think being not talking about money to your point is like a cultural, universal, social problem. But the difference is that a lot of other places I see people who don't know how to manage money have really good help. So,
Mm.
people who are, not good at managing money in their businesses happen to have accountants and finance people and bookkeepers
Right. Mm-hmm.
and if you have a little bit of money, then you have wealth managers and you have portfolio people and you have like, the bank will give you special treatment and call you and ask you how your investments are doing. Like, so there's a level of support that they get because they have the resources to afford that support. So the other thing
Mm-hmm.
that's unique about creative sector is very complex needs without the money to get that kind of support, except for the top 1%. So like Taylor Swift is dealing with her money in the same way that like, your average billionaire is probably, and there's probably a
Mm-hmm.
wealth management team and really smart people sitting around the room figuring out how to invest her billions and billions of ticket sale money. But
So
there's
true.
but there's
Mm-hmm.
very few Taylor Swifts. For
Yeah.
every Taylor Swift, there's 100,000 singer-songwriters who are never going to make a living from their music. They're going to make their living from bartending and serving and yoga teaching and
Mm-hmm.
everything else but the actual thing. So there's it's a economy in the creative industries that is very winner takes all, which is like a 1.1% have basically a lot of the opportunity and a lot of the resources, and the rest of the folks are in various degrees of struggle, which is different. Like there's no superstar accountants really. Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
billionaire who's just solely accounting. It's a much more evenly distributed kind of work. So that's another, I think, attribute about the nature of the work in the industry that makes it just a perfect storm of like, you don't know very much about this because you weren't given any training in it. Your stuff is more complicated than other people's, and you don't have the money to hire anybody to help
Yeah.
you do it.
Wow. Yeah. That's such a good synthesis. And and I'm curious, like I'm sure this comes out like from your research and talking to use like creatives and potential users of the product. This belief that like sometimes you encounter like an artist or creative, they'll be like, I'm not good with money. And it speaks to like, you mentioned that people in other sector might have the support. They're not necessarily good with money either. But I often come up with this like either explicit or implicit belief from creatives that money is too overwhelming for me. I'm not good with it. To
Yeah.
people who might have that belief or thoughts right now, what would you say to that?
Uh, I like this quote. I forget whose it is. It's one of those quotes that's like, I think attributed to Winston Churchill or something, but like I have no idea who actually
Mm,
said it because who knows what Winston Churchill actually said. But the quote goes something like, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. Um, it's something that I try to live by, and I'm very careful about what stories I tell myself, because those stories will become true.
mm,
And whether that story is a self-affirming story of I can do this or a self-negating story of I cannot do this, I do think it will be true over time because you will create a feedback loop for yourself. If you believe you can, then you're going to keep trying at it, and you will fail initially, or you will struggle with it, and then you'll get better and learn. And another kind of phrase that I use in my teaching is like confidence follows competence. So if you want to be confident in something, you have to get good at it. But in order to get good at something, you have to be bad at it first, and you have to work at it. And yes, there's a lot working potentially against you in that, it may not be as easy for a creative person who feels like their expertise is expressing words and feelings, or moving their body in beautiful ways. It may not feel like the analytical side of their brain is their strength. But I don't know that the level of financial illiteracy that is currently the average is actually people's capacity. I think they are
Mm-hmm.
capable of more than they give themselves credit for, um, because there are like my students are the best example. Like they're super intelligent people, all kinds of opinions about all kinds of things, and then you put a budget in front of them, and there's something clicks in their brain, and they go, "Oh, danger, danger zone, do not engage. You're going." And I think this is the fault of our schooling and the fault of our culture, where we make people feel stupid so quickly about things that they, I don't think is their fault that they are not experts in.
Mm-hmm.
We need we need to be taught things, and we need them to be taught without judgment. But we rush to judge, and we rush to make people feel stupid. So the fear of judgment, I think, is keeping people away from taking
Yes.
some amount of initiative, because it's never actually been easier to learn. It's never actually been cheaper and more democratic to find information. All information is now free on the internet. But you need to have the confidence in yourself that you can
Mm-hmm.
actually approach that subject and jump into it. And I don't know. It's a very difficult problem. Like I'm still trying to figure out how we can shift the culture on that particular front, because I think it's a very dangerous thing that's taken hold for so many people. They've basically abdicated their sense of agency and power, and giving over power to big corporations and banks that could care less about you and are just going to take even more money from you, because we've given ourselves up and said, "Oh, I can't figure this out, so you can just do whatever you want to me."
Mm-hmm. I think this is why the topic of like seemingly managing our expenses of taxes is like linked to so many layers. It's not just like it's related to our beliefs, it's related to our confidence, it's our upbringing. It's all
Yeah,
interconnected, all
and
tangled
it's
all together.
99% that stuff. It's 99% emotional, psychological, personal. 1% of it is math. 1% of it is
Mm,
like, what are the formulas, and how does interest rates work, and what things are eligible and not eligible for taxes. That's not actually the hard stuff, I don't think. I think the hard
so
stuff for
true.
people is like, I get anxiety when I think about money. Why? Because I don't make enough money. And when I realize I don't make enough money, I feel shame because my parents told me I wasn't gonna make enough money when I go into the arts, and I should have just listened to them. And I'm not a good artist because I'm not successful. And if I was a good artist, I'd be making money. And uh, you know, because I don't have enough money, I have to hide this because I'm ashamed. Like this is a vicious cycle that people get into. Nowhere in there did I say the words tax exemption or deductions or like amortization. Like none of those things are actually the thing that I think are what's mostly going on for people. I think mostly it's uh, the kind of cultural stigma, shame that we have built around this, which mind you, is like very strategic. Like it's very advantageous to a whole industry of people who make a lot of money from people not being able to do help themselves. Like there is
That is
a
so
big
true. Yeah.
business around that.
Hmm.
So there's no incentive to help anybody. There's only incentive to make people feel even more worse, make people feel even more scared, so that
Hmm.
all these financial planners and brokers and whatever are continue to stay in business.
Yeah, our anxiety with money is being capitalized further. Yeah, I never thought about that way, but it's so true. Yeah. Let's turn the conversation point back to you about where you are at, because now you're like managing the startup and you're teaching at the university and you have many other projects. Like, how do you balance it all?
Yeah, I was thinking about like how to answer this, because I don't want to uh I don't want to lie and make it sound like I have it all figured out. Um, because there's like an ideal balance that I'm trying to strive for. Maybe let me put it this way. I have an ideal balance that I am looking for, and I'm constantly looking for it. Like I don't know if I'll ever reach it. What
Mm,
one of the things I'm coming to terms with this year in particular is accepting and forgiving myself for the fact that I have a bit of a kind of like fully on, fully off way of working. I I was fully on in the first half of this year, and worked way too hard, like it hours and like with a level of um, difficulty and anxiety and stress like I don't recommend to anybody. I don't
mhm,
recommend it for myself, but it was a bunch of choices that I had to make because of timing of where things landed and where projects landed, and some things needed to happen. And I did some calculations and I said to myself, if I can make it through these 4 months, I will have all these outcomes on the other side, and then it cools down a bit, and I think I can do it. And this is like informed by many, many, many years of, overworking myself, being burnt out. I've pushed against my own limits, and then that all that happened, and then by June I was definitely burnt out. I knew I
mm,
was going to be, and I was. And then I started clawing back, and I've been like slowly chipping away. And now by July, I'm down to like basically like half a full work week at this point. I'm about to go away next week, and I'll be working very lightly, and then I'm going away on vacation for a couple of weeks. Like I'm, I'm kind of just accepting the way that I sometimes have to work is like I'm either fully on or just not really doing anything.
mm,
And I struggled with that because I feel a lot of shame around it. Because I'm also living in the world that everybody is in, where I feel like I should constantly be productive, and if I'm not maximizing every minute of every day that I'm awake in doing work, pushing something forward, I'm failing somebody or myself or some notion of failure. Uh, so it's challenging. It's
it's
challenging
challenging.
to find that balance, but I I try not to impose upon myself a sense of arbitrary balance. There's one thing that has not worked out for me is like the idea that like every day can be balanced and routine and every week will be exactly the same and I'll, always clock out by this. Like I find that actually more stressful and unhelpful to me at least to say like I can never work past 5 p.m. because then what I end up doing is just not being able to enjoy my evening because I know I have a deadline the next day. Like some days I gotta work late. What I do though is try to compensate for like the fluctuation. So if I have a
Mm,
busy week, a new thing I'm trying to do is like anytime I do a week-long retreat or a week-long conference or go somewhere to something that's like I know I'm gonna do 12-hour days, I try to book my calendar the rest of the week, the next week coming back, and it's just recovery time. I just like don't take any other meetings so that I can balance that out a bit. That's new for me. That's still me because I used to just like live my whole life 12-hour days, 7 days a week. But and that was my 20s, and even that, I think the same thing applies for my life. Like I don't regret my 20s and working very hard. I actually think most people in their 20s are not working hard enough because
mm,
when you get older, and I see this in myself as I age a little bit, and I see definitely my parents who are in their 50s and 60s, like your capacity is going to change over the course of your life. So you should work according to your capacity, not according to an arbitrary standard of like, well, a good work week is 36.5 hours, so that's what I should be doing. I actually am really glad that in my 20s I achieved a lot. I made a lot of work. I contributed a lot. I learned a lot. And now in my 30s, I'm actually not working anywhere close to the way I was in my
mm,
20s. And my priorities are shifting. And once I have a family, they'll shift further. And like, I think we need a little bit more of a flexible approach and a dynamic approach to understanding balance, and
mhm,
not this kind of rigidity that I hear in people. Because I have like 19-year-old interns sometimes will be like, I can't, whatever, whatever. I'm like, oh, what I'm hearing is like, you think you're doing some kind of like self-care or like work-life balance thing, but you're actually imposing it in such a rigid way that you're doing
mhm,
yourself a disservice. You're doing yourself actually a disservice because you're not leaning into your own flexibility and your own individual capacity, which is going to be different. Like different people have different strengths and weaknesses and capacities for how much they want to work, where they want to work on. I know this was supposed to be a personal question about
no,
me,
okay.
but I
Mhm,
can't help but opine about the state of work-life balance, productivity, and how we all are like talking about it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's too generalized, I find. It's not personalized enough for different people, and it's too obsessed with like a perfection of a model that you must always maintain instead of seasons. Like, bears sleep all through the winter. Like we
Mm-hmm.
could learn from nature and seasons, and it's okay to go up and down and not be so neurotically trying to control everything that uh, we can't, I don't think we can succeed on that in full.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is like we came from a time where like we don't talk about burnout or balance at all, and then now that's like become the new normal. And then, like you said, there's seems to be some holy grail sometimes that is like that is it, and then that itself is also very limiting. I hear what you're saying, and I think more and more, and like someone guests on this podcast too, and you alluded to it, is that the seasonality approach in the creative life is very important, and how those season peak and how those season ebbs and flow looks very different for everybody.
And what work you're doing, like what are we talking about? Like
Mm,
if, right now I just moved into a new place and we have to do a lot of renovations in this house. Uh, at the end of my burnout period professionally, I went right into renovations and did a bathroom remodel. I worked like basically as soon as I was done my day job, I would come home and I would work for hours on the bathroom every day for 2 or 3 weeks. And to somebody, they might look at that and go, "Oh, you're working such long hours." And I was like, that was the most therapeutic thing for me because
mm,
working on my bathroom was so completely different from what I do for my day job is
your
like
energy switch.
decisions. I have to convince people of things. I have to like think hard about making the right choice. I have to, listen. I have to argue. Like it's a very mentally, emotionally taxing kind of work that I do. And then I got to come home and just like work with my hands. And that work actually filled me. So, different types of work for different people at different times are also not going. I just think we need something more sophisticated than counting hours and
Mm-hmm.
counting uh, this like very coarse way of thinking about work. Because what you are doing, how that thing that you're doing affects you, whether it's filling you or draining you, also depends on who you are and what the purpose of that work is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what's what's next for you? I know that you said you're about to take some breaks. Is the
Yeah, for the
fully
very
off?
immediate future, a little bit of break time is coming for the
Mm-hmm.
summer. I would like to enjoy some sunshine and water, but I've already started seeding projects for the fall. I'm kind of moving more in the direction of artificial intelligence and the possibilities there. It's building on the work I was doing with SAI and the kind of technological innovation there. One of the things I realized halfway through the process of the tax platform that we built that where AI was going now had made what we were building already obsolete, and we hadn't even finished building it.
Mm,
It was too late at that point to like, just throw all that out. So we kept going and put out the platform that we designed. But I'm interested in now taking a new approach and basically I'm moving more into the fields of how can we use artificial intelligence to actually serve us? Because there's a lot of people in the art sector who I hear a lot of fear about. I feel there's a lot, they feel very threatened by it. They have a lot of strong feelings about AI in general. And 99% of people that I know or work with don't actually use it in any meaningful way. So
mm,
I'm interested in like trying to bring it into practice and try to solve the actual problems we have. We have a massive labor crisis. We don't have enough people working in, especially in the back end side of things in arts and culture. We have a massive kind of, crunch there because we don't have enough money as a sector to pay people more. The nonprofit sector in particular is shrinking and struggling. And I'm like, this is a great opportunity for some automation, some efficiency, some uh, growth in capacity, which is a thing that I know we've talked a lot about in the sector and wanted, but the the solution for growth was always more money, which was not coming. So this is something that
mm,
I really believe that the AI and the potential of AI in a very expansive sense, not just like ChatGPT, but
mm,
all of the things that it is going to be able to do is going to be as revolutionary as the internet was for our culture, for our society, for the way we work, for the way we organize. It'll have all the downfalls and the pitfalls that people are afraid of. Of course it will.
mm,
The
mm-hmm,
internet was awful in a lot of ways. And like looking at what Twitter became in the end, like I'm like, yeah, there's going to be some bad stuff. And at the same time, this conversation is possible right now because of the internet. And so I'm I'm trying to focus on that, on the
On the
generative,
positive.
productive possibilities of it, because I don't think enough people are. I think there's more people trying very hard in vain, I think, to protest it, not even really uh, engage with it. They're just kind of shouting at it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
more curious about what it could do for us that would maybe get us a little bit closer to the society that we were originally promised by the Industrial Revolution, which is that we will have so much surplus wealth and abundance that people will not need to be spend their whole lives just working,
Okay.
which was kind of, the human condition for millennium. Um, yeah, so that's the next phase for me. I think is going to become more focused on entrepreneurship in AI and creativity. I'm also doing stuff at the university. We're building a incubator for the future of performance there in our 1,200 seat theater called Chrysalis, which we just put out our website, so it's real now. And that's another place where I'm very excited about bringing in artists, bringing in creators, bringing in technologists to play and develop future future forward thinking performance experiences in all kinds of mediums, all kinds of disciplines, all kinds of genres, mostly with an interest in what is going to engage new audiences in new ways.
Mm-hmm.
How can we create innovation that will actually appeal to more different people? Because as someone whose family still doesn't find themselves interested in mainstream nonprofit arts and culture, I that's going back to your first question about what my cultural perspectives offer me. Like I see 90% of the Canadians in this place we call Canada
Yeah.
are not engaged in our Canadian arts and culture. We watch a lot of Hollywood and we listen
Very
to
true.
music from other places, but like we don't have enough of our own cultural creation or engagement here.
Engagement.
So it's a thing that I think is a place where we need to do a lot more work. Both bringing we've been doing a lot more work about diversifying kind of who the artists are and the voices are, but I don't think it's been enough to bring in the new audience because the interests have changed and times have changed and our attention has changed and our needs have changed from what we want from experiences. Like in Shakespeare's time, Shakespeare was Succession. It was entertainment. It was popular. It was the only thing that people could do that they then talked about at the office the next day. And we are doing Shakespeare now for a very different reason. Um, and I don't think it's anywhere close to having the cultural influence that Succession is having right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of curious about how the arts can, yeah, find a new way to influence and connect and engage with the people more broadly um,
Mm-hmm.
than it does currently.
Yeah. You know, one thing that struck me throughout this conversation, and I had a hunch that you're a person like that, is like you're multi-passionate and you can follow through with like some of the ideas that like you like that keeps evolving.
Mm,
And it makes me want to invite you to speak to, because I know that some of the audience of this podcast are also multi-passionate, but in my work with them, I know that some of them have the difficulty of like feeling, well, if I always like, develop different ideas and different seeds, then I'm not focused enough. What do you
yeah.
say to that?
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I did your survey on your quiz on your website, so
Yeah.
I feel like you've definitely thought about this more deeply than I have. But I think yeah, the world needs specialists and generalists in equal quantity. Where the job of a specialist is to kind of really, really, really go deep into something. And if you are a specialist, good on you. I honestly I envy people who are like, I'm the only person in the world who knows how to make shoes out of foam that are, used only by children in German opera. Like, great. You'll be always employed because there's
Mm,
only three of you in the world who do that thing. And if you get mastery at that, awesome. Uh, but I think you need to have a kind of the personality that has that kind of monomaniacal focus to become a specialist because you need to put in your 10,000 hours. Then there's the generalists, which is the camp I fall into, where I like to think of myself more of like I know about 10,000 things 1 inch deep, and my expertise then is connecting dots and trying to bring from one area to another. What it also allows me to do is I'm particularly I'm not really myself an expert in any of the things, but what I'm good at is being able to communicate with experts because what I find about a lot of specialists is they tend to be super geeky and sometimes they have a hard time communicating with anybody outside of their expertise. And I am good at talking to people like that. So I can take an expert from this domain, an expert from that domain, expert in this other domain. I can help them kind of talk to each other and be a bit of a translator of different domain expertise. And I find that to be my contribution is like I can bring those dots together and try to make something bigger happen of the whole, because that generalization, connecting energy is also very valuable. Otherwise, you have a whole bunch of silos and lots of knowledge, but those things need to come together. Like all of the interesting innovations in our world, all the interesting uh, challenges in our world, all the interesting art in the world, all is the product of collaboration. But collaboration is, I don't think something that just emerges because you put people in a room. It requires a lot of effort and careful stewardship because people are we're just giant balls of ego. We have so much anxiety, insecurity, self-esteem issues. We have our personal traumas and baggage that we bring, and like we don't talk about any of that in our work. So
Mm-hmm.
it requires a lot of uh, interpersonal ability, a lot of like analytical ability, a lot of capacity to hold these things and bring them together and problem solve in ways that connect those things. So for me, at least, the more that my interests diverge and go further and further in new directions, the more I feel like I've been able to be more valuable to everything that I do because I have more domain knowledge to draw from. And I do it in a way that I think I try to respect the limits of that. Like I don't claim to be uh, a expert in something where I only have a passing knowledge of it, because that's somebody else's job to be that, to be the representative of like, I know this thing very, very, very deeply. Um, but if the world was just that, I think, I mean, it's one of the things I think wrong with, I just learned this from a podcast. There was a healthcare practitioner talking, a doctor, I think, was talking about how the medical profession has become too specialized and there's not enough doctors whose job it is
Mm.
to connect the dots between specialists. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that. Like I'm dealing with a health thing right now where I'm going back and forth between two doctors who for years have never spoken to each other. And I'm like, maybe you should just talk to each other instead of me being the mediator who has no knowledge whatsoever about medical, understandings. Maybe there should be someone whose role it is to like be a little bit less
The
specialized. So
dialogue
there's,
between.
I
Mm-hmm.
think, I think there's a value to be had in not being hyper focused, and there's a value to be had in being hyper focused. But you got to kind of commit to that. Like if that's going to be your jam, then own it, but and then be a very very good dot connector. Be very very good at curiosity and learning about things, and bringing together different domains.
That's so great. Yeah, there's in between the dots, we need active effort in stewarding that and facilitating that. Thank you so much for sharing. Always, if people were to connect with you and or they want to connect with Sai and learn more about how they can use that, where can they find you and where can they find the tool?
Yeah, they can find Sai at Sai.cx. Unfortunately, because we've passed tax season and it was a very, very busy tax season for us, we've closed signups for now, and we're kind of figuring out our next steps with the platform for next year. But you can sign up for our newsletter there at least, and you'll find out
Mhm.
what happens next with that platform when we're ready. You can follow me by finding me at Owais.ca, and Google me and find my Twitter or LinkedIn. I mostly post on LinkedIn much more than on any kind of public platform. So if folks want to find me there and follow me there, then that would be the best way.
Excellent. I will make sure that those links goes into the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your perspective and your story.
My pleasure, Betty. It was great chatting with you, and thank you so much for the space.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on the Everyday Talent Podcast. This is the go-to podcast for the most candid takes on all things creative career related. If you like what you heard today, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and/or whatever platform you listen to podcasts. I also encourage you to share this episode with a creative friend. That will go a long way in helping us to support more creatives and make them feel seen. And if you're looking for more content, subscribe to my e-newsletter, Passionate Enough, where I share insights on how we can give ourselves permission to set up a career so that we are just passionate enough in what we do, make our art, and work to live rather than live to work. And if you're looking for one-on-one support, I also have 2 one-on-one coaching programs dedicated to support creatives looking for mindful reinvention in their career and/or go beyond aimless hustle in their freelancing. Check it out in the show notes and book a free consultation call today. May we build a creative career that nourishes our life and not sucking our soul. See you on the next episode.